Live from your local election headquarters, this is Battleground, Florida. Here's Evan Donovan.
Governor Ron DeSantis going viral throughout yesterday and today for this interaction with several high school students at the University of South Florida. During a visit to Tampa, the governor telling these students to take their mask off, clearly annoyed with them, telling them that the masks aren't doing anything and we need to stop this COVID theater. Good morning to you folks. Evan Donovan, political anchor and reporter for WFLA News Channel 8 here in Tampa Bay. JB Buno, digital anchor on the other side of the screen here for you. This interaction has gone absolutely wild on social media. At this point, most of you will probably have seen it. There's something in it, I think, for both sides. If you don't like Governor DeSantis, this is proof that he is a bully and he is mean to people. If you do like him, this is proof that he's right about COVID and that the masks don't work and he's being a strong leader here. And that's why I think this tweet has really done so well on social media and on Instagram and why so many outlets have reported on it, because I think for some it's good and for some it's bad. JB, I mean, that seems to be the interpretation that we're getting from most of the people watching.
10 million views in less than 24 hours, just going to show that, again, yeah, you hit it right on the head, Evan, that, supporters of Governor DeSantis seeing this clip and saying this is our guy, and those against Governor DeSantis pointing to this clip and saying this is why he's not our guy. So we're live in a lot of different places, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, live on Twitter as well. And you can use any of the hashtags on your screen. Hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan. We're going to be featuring your comments, but we're also running, folks, an interactive poll here. We're going to come back to our poll results, but if you want to vote on Twitter, we have a Twitter video, or excuse me, a Twitter poll here that reads, in the video from USF, do you think Governor DeSantis was rude or bullied the students wearing masks? Those are the results as of now, but we're going to come back in just a few minutes. Let's one more time.
Let me ask you real quick, JB, that poll is on Twitter. That's not our Facebook
on the
poll.
WFLA. We also, I think, are running it on YouTube. Excuse me, on Facebook, but it's also, yes, on the WFLA Twitter page. A couple things happening at this hour, including Governor DeSantis himself getting set to speak in Panama City Beach. He's speaking with several officials on the Florida Panhandle, so we'll be coming back to this momentarily once Governor DeSantis does, in fact, step up to the podium. Before I toss things back over to you, Evan, I want to play back the clip. It's a 15-second clip. Yep. For those of you who missed it, this was Governor DeSantis as he walked up to the podium for yesterday's press conference at the University of South Florida.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
All right. Well, it's good to be at USF.
It's that sigh at the end that sort of shows he's exasperated, obviously, and certainly annoyed with the situation here. Again, let's talk about the facts, right? Last month, about 6 weeks ago, I talked to Dr. Thomas Unash, the head of infectious disease research at USF. We talked about cloth masks, and I asked him, are they really doing anything? Because at this point, we've sort of seen a lot of data come out. There hasn't been a lot of strong data in favor of cloth masks. It does appear N95 and KN95 masks are effective, particularly for the wearer, in at least slowing the spread of COVID-19. But even Dr. Thomas Unash told us told us 6 weeks ago in the soundbite I played in this story yesterday, that the cloth masks likely aren't doing very much. Now, the governor, though, has also championed personal freedom. And part of that personal freedom is allowing people to wear a mask or get a vaccine if they feel like that's the right way to direct their health. And he was very adamant about the fact that parents should be the one making those decisions for their kids. Then he stepped in and tried to make that decision for those kids. So I think a lot of people are, calling out some hypocrisy there. And again, as we talked about at the beginning, if this is your guy and you really like him, people are saying this is the right approach. And he's right about this. If you don't like him, then this is evidence that he's wrong in the way that he treats people. And that's why I think people on both sides are speaking out about it.
We're going to get to some of your social media reaction. You can use the hashtags on your screen, hashtag HeyEvan, hashtag HeyJB. We're going to feature some of your comments. They're coming through so quickly on Facebook. I'm trying to grab a couple here. But whether or not you are supportive of DeSantis in this moment, I don't know if you would call it a hot mic moment. I mean, he's walking up to the podium in advance of the press conference actually beginning, or whether or not you're against DeSantis in this moment, you disagree with what he's saying. If you disagree with his behavior towards these students, we want to hear from you. So we're going to feature some of your reaction as we await Governor DeSantis coming up to the podium here in Panama
Before
City
we go
Beach.
to that, JB, I appreciate you setting it up that way. Can we address that for 1 second? Because I think there is a decent chance that this was not an accident whatsoever. I mean, the governor is a very smart man. He knows, he's very aware of his surroundings. He knows when he's on camera. He's walking up to a podium. What you can't see, obviously, folks, for those of you who have never been to a press gaggle, there's a line of reporters and cameras and photojournalists on the other side of him that are in an arc around that room shooting the podium. And so he's very well aware that those microphones are on. All those sound checks, all those things happen before you get there. And again, to the governor's point and his press office's point, they stood by these comments yesterday and said, look, you know, we have said many times that they say that they don't do anything. Obviously, I just explained to you that the scholarship on this issue seems to be that cloth masks don't really do anything, but that KN95 and N95 masks do something. So takeaway for you at home, if you really want to protect yourself, make sure you're wearing the right mask, wearing one of those N95s or KN95s. But so I don't think that this was an accident. You know, I mean, I think the governor knew that he was on camera and that this would be recorded, and I think he wanted to get that message across to those students.
I want to ask you in a moment. This might be one of the most viewed videos of his governorship, of Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida. I mean, he made the he made the appearance on Fox News, the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, that went viral as well. But this one receiving tens of millions of views across several different social media accounts, including WFLA. So we're going to get into the political aspect here in just a moment. Let's get to some of the comments that have come in here in the Facebook Live comment section. I'm going to read through as many as I can. If you want your comment featured here on Battleground Florida with Evan Donovan, myself, JB Buno, you can use hashtag #HeyEvan, hashtag #HeyJB. If you don't want your comment spotlighted, just don't use the hashtag. We'll let your comment continue to scroll on by in our comment section. Desiree saying hashtag #HeyJB. I wish that had been my child. He had no right to talk to kids like that. Ellen saying hashtag #HeyEvan. He is passing his agenda on people. You gave a choice. Bullying.
I think she meant you have a choice.
Yeah. Teresa Pace, hashtag #HeyJB. I believe he spoke very rude to those students. As for me, I wear a cloth double mask. He did not have the right to talk that way. A lot of the comments that I'm seeing so far with the hashtags, folks, are against Governor DeSantis' behavior. Kathy, hashtag #HeyJB. Yes, it's none of his business. How does he know their situations? I still wear a mask into any store or a crowded area that I go into because my husband has no immune system. Very disgusted with his attitude. And Shannon, one more, hashtag #HeyJB. Look, I'd love to unmask, but the numbers are still high in a lot of places. I think that one of the comments that I saw most of all on Twitter yesterday, Evan, was how Governor DeSantis in previous press conferences had said that masks were a choice for people, and that this here, he's coming up. Now, he is saying in the video, you can say it, so if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous. I think that it depends on your optics of what he is saying to these students and whether or not you feel he is bullying these students, but this has really created quite an uproar on Twitter.
Look, he is giving them the option, but obviously, as a authority figure, saying this is ridiculous and addressing them and calling them out like that, one could argue that is a sincere form of coercion, and that most kids in that situation are going to do what adults tell them, especially when it's the governor of the state that you live in. So I think just take that into account when you're picking out that one line about him saying you can wear it if it's your choice. Think about the whole context of being a middle school, high school student, and standing behind the governor, getting ready for this press conference, being very nervous, and then having the governor address you that way. One of the kids on the far left there, you see him right there on the very far left, in between Will Weatherford, the former speaker, and the governor. That's Kevin Brown Jr. We actually spoke to him last night. Our colleague Justin Schecker spoke to him and his family last night. He said, look, at first, he was actually called aside by someone with the governor's office who told him to take his mask off. He then took it off, walked back into the frame to stand on the side of that little stand-up board behind the governor there. And as he stood there for a couple of seconds, then put his mask back on and told us it's because I thought about it. I didn't feel comfortable without it. I wanted to wear it. It's my right. So I put it back on. And I think that's the point here, right? Is that as long as people are making informed decisions, then it's really their personal decision. And the governor has said that in the past. Now, I think the governor would argue, and people who, have looked at the data would argue that if that mask isn't really doing anything for you, is there any point in you wearing it? Again, I think it's up to people to make their own decisions as long as they are informed about the way that they're doing it.
I want to get in these 3 comments on the other side here really quickly. Sure. #KJB, people need to stop being so sensitive, from Danielle. Rick Host, #KJB, it is time to move on. We can't wear masks for the rest of our lives. Here's Governor Ron DeSantis. Let's listen in.
Hello. We got a good group of folks here. It's always great to be in Panama City. I've got our Surgeon General for the state of Florida, Joe Ladapo, who's doing a really good job. I got somebody else who is known a little bit around here, our Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Petronas. I've got Dr. John Ward, who's the President of Dermatology Specialists of Florida. I think he brought all his staff and many of his patients here today. We have Dr. Raj Bendre. He's an oncology specialist. And then we have Dr. Ellen McKnight, who's a rheumatologist, and she has her own private practice in Pensacola, Florida. So I want to welcome all the physicians and everybody else who's here today. We're here today to really stand up for the traditional practice of medicine. I think what we've seen, particularly over the last 2 years, has been a very politicized medical establishment, and they kind of have certain views. A lot of times they're informed by political ideology, unfortunately, very tracking closely with people like Dr. Fauci. And if practitioners dissent from that, there's sometimes movements to have reprisal against that just for trying to practice medicine. If you look at what some of the powers that be have said over the last 2 years, they said lockdown would stop COVID. Then they said, you had to have mask mandates would stop COVID. Then they said schools need. They said the kids had to be forced to wear masks 8 hours a day. Then they said if you got the vaccine, you wouldn't be able to get infected or transmit. So all these things that have been said and have had actually the coercive force of the state behind them in many other places. We're a free state in Florida. We've stood against that. But you've seen a lot of this be imposed against people. People have lost their jobs over these policies. People have lost, their kids have lost access to education over these policies. Their experience has been eroded as a result of a lot of these policies. And there's been huge problems, that have happened with that. And at the end of the day, we made sure that we were choosing freedom really across the board. Yes, keep businesses open. We're doing very well in Northwest Florida. We're happy to see that. We're going to continue to do that. Yes, make sure you're protecting people's constitutional rights. Yes, make sure we have kids in school. Yes, make sure we are not going to let people lose their jobs over vaccine mandates. It's just not going to happen. So, we've done all those things. And if you look, we were down the road in Fort Walton Beach a couple weeks ago announcing that in 2021, Florida set an all-time record for domestic tourism coming into the state of Florida. That's even more than pre-COVID, which is really a testament to the fact that people understand they come here and they can live like normal folks. It's a free state. They're not going to have to show medical papers to be able to go buy a hamburger somewhere. They're going to be able to basically live in a free society. So we're proud of that. But we also understand that for all the good we've done with protecting people's freedoms, you still have more that needs to be done. There's still more threats to freedom. Last year, for example, I had a roundtable. It's probably like February of 2021. I had a roundtable with physicians big-time medical people, one from Harvard Law School, one from Stanford Medical School, and one from Oxford in the United Kingdom, one of the best epidemiologists in the world. And they were discussing a whole host of things, and their perspective was 180 degrees from Dr. Fauci. They said lockdowns don't work. They said lockdowns are harmful. They were right. Fauci was wrong. They said that kids needed to be in school, and the school closures were bad. And obviously the medical establishment said you couldn't have school for a very long time, and they were wrong, and our physicians were right. They said that you should not force school children to wear cloth masks during the school day. And obviously Fauci and CDC said you have to do this. And these physicians who were at this roundtable were right. But when they were saying all this a year ago, it got censored by Google and YouTube. They actually took the video down because they claimed it was COVID misinformation. And they said that it departed from what the, quote, majority view on some of these things are. Here's the issue. It probably was the majority view that kids needed to be forced masking of people who were willing to speak out, because most people in the medical knew it wasn't good, but they didn't want to speak out because they had fear of reprisal. And so you had some people who were very brave. I mean, the folks we had, the Bhattacharyas and the Kaldorfs and the Gupta, they stood up. They faced a huge amount of fire for just standing up for science and standing up for evidence and saying that it should be evidence-based, not ideology-based. And so this is something that's really, really significant. You have to have protection for the First Amendment rights of people who are practicing medicine. You're not going to have good medicine practice if people are fearful of doing things that the evidence is telling them to do just because it may conflict with the narrative. And so that's why. So a couple months after our roundtable with these practitioners and these researchers was censored, the Federation of State Medical Boards released a threatening statement saying, quote, physicians who generate and spread COVID-19 vaccine misinformation or disinformation are risking disciplinary action by state medical boards, including the suspension or revocation of their medical license. And I think most of you know here, you take away that medical license and you've neutered someone's ability entirely to practice medicine. And so we see this as something that is a big problem, because a lot of what these physicians were doing was basically saying things that ended up being borne out to be true. You know, it's interesting. People that would go against the narrative, like Florida, you go against the narrative, there'd be this like big spasm, and then 6 to 12 months later, everyone will then start doing that, and people realize that it was right. And so it's really dangerous. If you had said a year ago that COVID-19 originated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they would absolutely have censored you for that. If you said things that have turned out to be true, when I used to say in the summer that, you know, look, the vaccines are not preventing, you know, they were supposed to be 100% effective or 95% effective at preventing infection. And we saw many people that had, quote, breakthrough cases. So we were seeing that in real time. We're reporting that to people. The media says, oh, you know, that's not true. And now we know, having gone through the last 9 months, how many people who've had COVID over the last 6 months also had been vaccinated. Almost, you know, the vast majority of those folks. So that would have been misinformation then. Now it's a common understanding today. And so this is something that is really significant in terms of the practice of medicine. If you're going to take things, try to impose an official narrative without sufficient evidence, and then punish people who are actually trying to pursue the truth. And so the Florida legislature has actually taken on this issue. They've worked with some stakeholders here who you'll hear from to put together what's called the Free Speech of Healthcare Practitioners Act that has the types of additional protections that we need. They've moved it along. I think they've shown a lot of leadership. It has not gotten across the finish line. So we're here today to say, let's get this thing across the finish line. Let's make sure we can do it. we want to make sure that people can exercise sound judgment. We want doctors to be able to practice medicine and not just be genuflecting to whatever may come out of some of these agencies or professional bodies. And look, I take no joy in saying this. I mean, if you've looked at how CDC has performed over the last last couple years, the fact of the matter is it leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of ideology. I mean, just think about how all of a sudden the guidance has changed right before the State of the Union address. Is that how science works? Does the science change based on polling data? Does the science change because you have a midterm election coming up? I mean, no. So we see that, and it just causes people to lose confidence. And so what I think most Floridians want is to be able to work with the folks that they know and trust in the medical profession, and want those doctors to feel free to follow the evidence where it leads them and to do the best they can for their patients. And so I think this piece of legislation is timely. I think it's important. I think it's sad that we're actually having to do this, quite frankly, because it used to not be like this, but all of a sudden now it just seems like from big tech to, some of the medical establishment, the bureaucracy, they really want to impose one narrative. And if you don't get in line on that, then they try to censor you or pull your license or do all these other things. And that's wrong. That's not what we want in the state of Florida. I mean, we want robust inquiry, robust debate. And we want practitioners to be able to feel that they're going to be protected. So a lot of what we're talking about in this legislation and then things that we've talked about is people have a right to access different types of COVID-19 treatments. I mean, if a physician has something that they think could be beneficial, the patient wants to do it, they should be able to do it. You don't want a situation where a doctor wants to administer treatment to somebody and the hospital is telling them they can't do it because of something from CDC or something like that. We want people to be able to access, particularly in these right to try situations. It's very, very important. So we want to make sure that that's the case. We want to make sure that physicians feel empowered to be able to do it. And if a hospital system is blocking that type of care, then we will hold the hospital system accountable under Florida law. That's what we're looking to do. So we hope we're able to do, we're getting down to the wire. We've got a little over a week left in the legislative session. I know that this is something that's important to an awful lot of people throughout the state of Florida, and not just for the doctors. I mean, and clearly that has an impact on their daily lives, but individual Floridians, they want to be able to rely on physicians to offer their best judgment. I don't think they just want to be limited to simply recycled Fauciism. I think they want to be able to have a doctor who's going to be able to offer their best perspective based on what's going on. And so that's why we're here today. We hope we can get this done. We've got a bunch of folks who are going to also come up and talk, and I'm going to introduce them. First, I'll introduce our Surgeon General. Dr. Ladapo, from the very beginning of COVID, has been basically saying the emperor has no clothes. He warned against these perpetual lockdowns. He was right about that. He warned against this idea that mask mandates would end COVID. He warned against the harm of having kids out of school. He warned against the problems with coercive vaccine mandate policies, and he's been proven right on all those things. But because he's been proven right, because he has been willing to take on the cathedral, a lot of people don't like him very much because he threatens, a lot of what they've hung their hat on. And so I think it's really refreshing, to have Joe in here fighting the fight, basically fighting for evidence-based medicine, fighting for patients, and fighting for our practitioners to be able to have the freedom to practice. So we'll have Joe come up.
It'd be one thing if, when you're proven right, people acknowledge it. I'm sorry, you're right. Let's try to do things better. And, do you have any other ideas? But nope, none of that. It's just like nothing happened.
JB here with you folks on Battleground, Florida, with Governor DeSantis speaking with Jimmy Patronis, Joseph Ladapo, new Chief Medical Officer for the state of Florida. We're back here with you, everybody, on Battleground, Florida. If you want to continue watching the press, we're going to go back to it in just a moment, but if you want to continue watching the press conference, you can absolutely do so. It's on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. All you have to do is go over to our website and you will find the continuation of the press conference there from the Florida Panhandle. We are live across all of our social media platforms on Battleground Florida on WFLA Now to talk to you about Governor DeSantis' video, the video that went viral yesterday from the University of South Florida with Governor DeSantis chiding students for wearing masks, giving them the option to wear those masks during the press conference at the University of South Florida. But it was, of course, his tone that struck a chord with a lot of folks on social media. Some seeing this as the type of behavior that they want in an elected official, others seeing it as crossing a line with students. Back here with us live on Battleground Florida, Evan Donovan. Evan, I want to get to our poll results, if I may, because this is something that a lot of folks were waiting to see. And let's see if we can bring this back up. And here it is. Okay, so we're going to reload this. We're going to refresh this live on Twitter and show you that our Twitter poll results, 66% say that the governor was rude or bullying those students wearing the masks. About a third or so voting no in this poll.
And wait, before we go any further, JB, I know that we can, because we've done this so many times over
a lot of
few
polls.
years.
A lot of polls, yep.
We can sort of judge there's an inherent bias based on the platform that we're using. Facebook tends to skew further right. I believe our Twitter polls tend to skew further left.
It does. More left than Facebook.
Yeah.
So let's go now to Facebook and show you what our Facebook poll responded. It's 1,000 votes in our interactive Facebook Live poll. Did Governor DeSantis act rude or bully the mask-wearing students in Wednesday's video from USF? 55% say yes. 45% say no.
So let's couch that. That's the Facebook poll results.
That is the Facebook poll results.
So for those of you who are joining us and you watch regularly, you'll know that our Facebook poll results do tend to skew more to the right. And again, as I mentioned, the Twitter results tend to skew more to the left. So it's significant here, at least to me.
You see it.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious when we do these polls. And again, we've done so many of these, folks.
We learn over time.
You just have to take my word for it.
The audience on Facebook is very different than the audience on Twitter.
Sure.
You have different people who will sign up for different social media platforms based on, where they fall in the political spectrum. So
and look, do we have a methodology? Have we done a study about it? No, it's not. I'm just giving you my general tenor of the way these work after doing hundreds of them. JB's probably done thousands of them. So this is obviously based on a lot of experience. So it is significant to me, at least, that even people on Facebook think that he was rude or bullying. And by the way, that tracks with what I've been hearing. Obviously, my tweet yesterday was the #1 tweet in the world for a while. Everyone I know reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is wild." And of all the people who contacted me, I had even a lot of Republican friends say, "Yeah, he's right about the mask thing, but boy, he didn't have to do it like that." And so I think that's interesting to see that even where we would expect this to be a no answer on that Facebook poll, you're still seeing 55% of people say, yes, he was a little bit rude.
So we are going to go back to the Florida Panhandle. We are going to take you back to Chief Medical Officer Joseph Ladapo speaking there in Panama City Beach. We're also expecting to hear from CFO Jimmy Patronis. And then back, of course, Governor DeSantis. And let's make this clear. Governor DeSantis is likely going to be taking questions from the press who are there in Panama City Beach. And you would imagine that one of the first questions, if not the question that is going to be asked, is his response to the video going viral Wednesday from the University of South Florida and really going viral off the WFLA Twitter page and the Evan Donovan Twitter page.
Let's just call it what it is. It would be journalistic malpractice if someone doesn't ask that question. So let's hope so. And in fact, we have a sister station there. So I'm going to call up there and try and see if we can get in the reporter's ear and get them to ask that question.
I want to ask you now, Evan, this 2022, an enormous year as far as the political landscape in Florida. Governor DeSantis up for re-election this year, wildly popular amongst his base, but this is a video that galvanizes conversation on both sides of the political aisle, whether or not you believe in what Governor DeSantis has done for the state of Florida over the last 18 months amidst the pandemic, or really 18 months plus, or whether or not there's some some comments that have come in our Facebook Live and YouTube Live comment section that have been very, very direct and critical and insulting of Governor DeSantis and how he has carried himself as the governor of Florida. So we have two parties here going back and forth. This video, in your opinion, where does this video fall as far as the 2022 election cycle and his prospects for re-election?
Well, I think that's why that poll result was so interesting to me, because it sort of proves that even people who agree with the governor, who say, yeah, he was right about masks, or I'm glad that he put kids back in school at the beginning of the first after he locked down the state for a small period in that first initial COVID wave, that they're glad that he put kids back in school. And so I think there's a lot of people who agree with the steps that he has made, but maybe not the way that he does them. And that poll kind of lends some credence to that. And again, that's why I think this video is so interesting and has been embraced by both sides, because it shows either the best or worst parts, depending on where you sit on the political spectrum, of Governor Ron DeSantis. And so is it enough to make people who agree with him and are Republicans vote against him in November? No, I don't think so. I mean, not to mention the fact that that's 8 months from now, maybe even 8 months to the day. I mean, we're getting pretty close to that. I don't think this is enough to make people vote against him who already support him, but it could be the beginning of an opening. You might see Democrats try to use this as a way to expose what they believe are his weaknesses. So I think it's certainly fascinating, and I think you're going to see it. No question, you're going to see it in some campaign ads. Let's put it that way.
Let's remind folks, you can use hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan if you'd like your comment featured on screen. I want to spend the next just couple of minutes going back to a couple more comments. I really want to give a voice to you at home, wherever you're watching from. Hopefully you're here in the Tampa Bay area or here in the state of Florida, because we really want to feature those opinions of Floridians. But let's get to another comment that came in right as I was reading through some of the comments that were very supportive of DeSantis in this moment. Rachel Creech saying, hashtag HeyJB, I feel like he was being more joking than demeaning. There was laughter from the students in response, and there was sort of this back and forth yesterday on Twitter, right underneath your tweet, Evan, of people saying whether or not, alleging that he was really joking in that moment or whether or not he was being serious. I think when he spins back around and he scoffs in the way, he exhales in the way that he does, I think that people interpret that in a different way. I think it depends on your sense of humor too, but there were people who saw this more in a humorous light than a serious light, though the students that Justin Checker spoke with last night, the student and the mother that Justin spoke with last night, didn't really see the humor in the situation. Yeah,
well, I mean, look, I think a couple different things there. I mean, some of that laughter strikes me as awkward laughter, like they don't really know what to do.
Like that's the governor of Florida standing 3 feet from me.
So remember, these kids are in high school. Remember what it was like to be in high school. Like it's an intimidating environment for everyone. But yeah, according to some other folks who saw them after the event was over, they were being jovial with the governor, and so, I think again, it's up for interpretation. How obviously we spoke with some of the students and parents, and they felt like the governor had overstepped the line. We didn't speak with all of them, so perhaps some of the other ones felt differently.
I think one of the things that I pay attention to very much on social media, Evan. I'm a student of social media, and I'm always following trends and following what people are clicking on and trying to just kind of read between the characters, if you will, when it comes to social media. The one word that I think really is a sticking point on this story is the word bullying, is whether or not Governor DeSantis, in the opinion of the viewer of this video, is characterized as being a bully. And because the word bully was characterized with our former president of the United States by so many people on the left who were pointing at former President Donald Trump.
And on the
saying,
right, by the way.
Right. And saying that, using that word to describe the way that he, ran the White House and ran his administration. Now it's a word that's being carried over and being used to describe Governor DeSantis in this video, who a lot of Republicans look at as the future of the party, if you will. So the word bullying is really, and I'm on YouTube Live as well. We're streaming to YouTube Live, and I see that we've got Eagle and we've got Martin and a few other people who are really honing in on that word, because that word really does encapsulate.
It's a loaded word.
It's a loaded Word. It really is. And listen,
I think our web story said scolded.
Yeah.
And
or
which I think
chiding.
is accurate. Chiding is probably accurate. I put on the tweet that he was annoyed. That's factually absolutely correct. He's definitely annoyed.
He looks annoyed in the video, and
but I think when you get into words like that, bullying, then it does, those terms do get loaded, and you got to be careful.
All right, so now we have some of the
but again, I'm not taking a position on whether he was bullying them or not. We're just explaining that word carries with it extra meaning.
It does. That word, the word bullying, really is that's what I was saying earlier as far as how I study words on social media. That word has been used a lot in response to this video. It's even in our poll because there were so many people who that was the first word that came to their mind when they saw this video. Mm-hmm. That side of the response was, I'm watching a bully. And then others who are on the other side were saying, I'm watching this video and I'm watching a leader. I'm watching somebody who is standing up to a narrative that I have for so long been against. So there's that very, very interesting polarization with this video, which is why I think it went viral, Evan, on your page. Let's show you really quickly, everybody, from the Panhandle. Now we have some of the doctors here speaking. Governor DeSantis on the right there near Evan. He is going to be speaking at the end here and taking questions from the media. We are going to be going back to that. In fact, we're going to be going back to the press conference here in a moment. Yeah. After we do go back to the press conference, we'll kind of come back on stream here at the end, the culmination of this press conference from Panama City Beach. We'll kind of dissect what DeSantis says in response to reporters who are very likely going to be asking a question about the video from yesterday at USF.
I need to get with our staff so we can make sure that we get that message in there.
Yeah, any final thoughts, Evan, before we toss this back over to Panama City Beach?
No, I think, again, there was something for everyone in that video, and I think that's why it was so viral so quickly, because people who like him loved the video, people who don't like him loved the video. And that's why I think both sides are using it. I think you can expect to see that come. I'm interested to see what his comments will be today about it. And so we'll come back to you and share them with you if there's anything significant.
You can continue to vote. We'll look at our poll results here at the end as well. But for now, let's go back to Panama City Beach. Governor DeSantis, Jimmy Patronis, Joseph Ladapo speaking here at Panama City Beach.
But now these certifying boards have become political arms of the CDC and Big Pharma, and they are going after your doctors. In the middle of a pandemic, public health policy debates are a necessity. But Dr. Fauci, Big Pharma, they orchestrated with a compliant media the takedown of any physician who didn't echo the narrative that we needed to mask school children and we didn't need to make vaccines mandatory. And remember, when you've silenced your physicians, it's no longer silence, it's propaganda. Those courageous enough to speak out are now being threatened throughout the nation and even here in the free state of Florida. The good news is that the governor and the Surgeon General are here and they're not going to let that happen. When this law is put into place here in Florida, physicians will flood to our state. Having a Florida license will provide physicians security that political speech and differences of medical opinion won't cost them their ability to take care of their patients. I join the governor, the Surgeon General, and thousands of other physicians and healthcare heroes to declare that we need to buck the CDC. We need our doctors to have their own opinions about how to take care of their patients. With this law in place, these protections will make Florida the sanctuary state for physicians. Now we just need to get the legislature to do its part and get this done for our doctors, for the citizens of Florida, and for our fearless leader, Governor Ron DeSantis. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much to Dr. Ward. He brings up a good point about some of the stuff that we've seen coming down the pike. You guys remember summer of 2020 we were saying we need to have the school year. There's not going to be any changes. They need to be in school. The American Academy of Pediatrics initially was like, kids need to be in school because that's where the evidence was in the data. Well, then the teachers' unions got a hold of them, and then they changed the guidance, and then that's when they really embraced things like forced masking for 8 hours a day. And so you see interest groups impacting these professional organizations and the CDC itself. Once Biden became president, you had the unions going in there and disrupting the guidance that, and it may not have been the best guidance, but they made it a lot worse because of politics. And that's just unfortunate when it becomes politics. And you know, some of these groups in these bureaucracies, like sometimes I just think, you know, we need a total and complete shutdown until we can figure out what the hell is going on with them. Dr. Raj Bendre, come on.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Governor, for having this bill here. This is a very important bill, very, very important. I'm a physician who had to take the Hippocratic Oath, and this is a very important oath, and the primary aspect of the oath is where the physician agrees not to do any harm. Primum non nocere, do no harm. And that's a really, really important point there, because what we're seeing right now is the physicians have completely relinquished that part of their oath, and very disturbing. So this this bill is very important to protect the patients. Well, it allows free speech for physicians, which allows them to engage each other, discuss openly their thoughts, and whenever you have open discussion and exchange of ideas, you get real science. You get people exchanging ideas and going back and forth and coming up with a plan which is meaningful, as opposed to mandates that are put down from a centralized authority, which is never a good thing. So thank you very much for the bill. Hopefully it gets through and it protects the patients and the physicians. Thank you.
So we're also happy to have Dr. Ellen McKnight over from Escambia County. So she's got her own practice, and she's going to come up and say a few things. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Can you hear? Because okay, I have to be on my tippy toes. I'm sorry. As a practicing physician for over 30 years, I can attest to the development of disturbing trends in the practice of medicine. Those disturbing trends include the quelling of vigorous medical debate, the intentional silencing of physicians, the assault on off-label prescribing, and the callous disregard for the sanctity of the decisions that the doctor and patient make together in the exam room. For my entire career, the highly educated, skilled physician was thought to be the only one capable to weigh the risk-benefit ratio of a potential treatment. Not career bureaucrats, not media talking heads, and not governors. And I'm so thankful that our governor did not attempt to practice medicine out of the governor's mansion with a one-size-fits-all policy that many other governors installed. Physicians who dare to think for themselves, dare to openly discuss promising clinical observations, or dare to promote innovative treatments are being threatened with revocation of their medical licenses and their board certification status. It is career-ending if a physician loses his or her board certification or license to practice medicine. A doctor recently told me that he would rather be fired than lose his license or board certification status because, quote, at least I could still get a job in this messed up system if I wanted. It is the if I wanted part of that statement that should give us all pause. I believe good quality physicians facing yet another unnecessary obstacle when treating patients, such as censorship of speech or interference in the doctor-patient relationship, may retire early or choose to do something else altogether. We need to encourage free thought in medicine, and that can occasionally be controversial. We need brave doctors who are willing to express their opinions even if it challenges the orthodoxy. If there is no free thought, then vigorous scientific debate cannot exist. If doctors cannot act upon and speak out about their clinical observations, then medical advancements will be thwarted. If these boards overstep their authority and unjustly revoke the medical license or board certification of a doctor simply for voicing his or her opinion, they will be held accountable in the state of Florida. And if we are able to pass these much-needed protections for patients and physicians, the state of Florida will be at the forefront of the movement to protect freedom of expression and will be, as we often are, a model for the rest of the nation.
One of the things that I kind of learned just going through the last couple years, prior to COVID, I went to the doctor when the Navy told me to back in active duty. They actually put a lot of shot. I don't know what the hell they were putting in me. Now I would ask more questions, but it's all good. But I didn't really have. It just wasn't something. And then we had our kids, and then we're involved with that with my wife and everything, and that was that. And then COVID comes, and I start to see the practice in terms of how the response to treating COVID patients. And the one thing that you really see crystal clear is the extent to which Big Pharma, they have a hammerlock over the medical establishment in this country. It's just true. And so much of it is being driven by these massive, very powerful, very wealthy pharmaceutical companies. And it is really, I think, contributing to the cribbing of thought and debate within the medical profession, because it's like if you want to try to do a treatment that's not a big pharma product, it's almost like that's not even discussed. Like they just don't want you to do that. And so I think that having seen that and just seeing the influence, it is a profound influence, and that's just the reality. And there have been discussions about how pharma influences legislation, Congress, all that, and I'm sure that there's some truth to that. But in this particular instance, with how the medical establishment really in lockstep, with the biggest drug companies, is that really the extent of the debate that we want to see, or do we want to be able to have robust protections for practitioners? I know where we stand in Florida. I know what we're going to do, and if we can get this legislation over the finish line, be able to sign it, and when we sign it, we'll have great protections. We'll also be sending a message to people throughout the country that Florida, yes, it's a refuge from people seeking to flee bad blue states, high crime, taxes, but it's also a refuge for physicians who just want to practice their craft freely like they were intended to do in the first place. So let's get this done. Thank you, guys. All right, we have any questions out there?
Do you have a response to the current state of Ukraine?
I've addressed it a bunch of times. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the 2 points that I've made is, you have somebody like Putin who's really just sitting on a bunch of gas and oil. That's all he has. His society's really hollowed out, but he sends so much to Europe and now to the United States because Biden came in and he reduced our domestic capacity. We were energy independent prior to Biden taking office. Now you see what's happening to people at the pump. Oil just hit $115 a barrel. I think it's going to go to $150 a barrel or maybe even more. What does that mean for you at the pump? It means gas is going to be $4 or $5 a gallon within the next few months. That is going to have a huge impact on people's family budgets. So just from an economic perspective, shutting down Keystone, nixing ANWR, not allowing production on federal lands, that has absolutely contributed to the massive spike we've seen in energy prices. And the thing is like, what are you going to do? You're just not going to commute to work? You're just not going to have your home in a summer air condition? Of course, you need to do, and it's tough for people. So it's a huge impact on families' budgets. But then from beyond just the economic, from a national security perspective, is our nation more secure when we're energy independent or when we're helping to fuel regimes like Putin's regime? I want to be energy independent, and that's what we should be. And so what he's able to do, because he has now, they've doubled what they're sending in the United States since Biden took office. They have a huge impact in terms of what's going on with Europe, that is fueling his ambitions. And if you had energy independence, you could sock him on that, and it would be much more difficult for him to sustain what he's doing. And look, I mean, this is just, it's sad to say, but when Biden fumbled the Afghanistan, when you had 13 service members killed, when you left all that equipment behind, when you left a bunch of other Americans behind, the humiliation of that experience was something that Russia was watching, China was watching, Iran was watching, and that really whetted the appetite of some of the world's worst authoritarians. And so they feel emboldened now because they think they can get away with a lot. And I think that Putin would probably not have done this if he thought the United States was strong. But I think he thinks that the United States is weak because of the impotence of Biden's administration, and he's doing some really bad stuff right now. And it's sad to see. Yes, sir.
Governor, Citizens Insurance, which is one of the state's largest home insurers, is considering raising their rates by 11%. What's your opinion on that?
Well, we're seeing costs go up across the board on everything, including the homeowners insurance. I mean, this is a big issue. We did a big reform recently. It's taking effect now. It's going to take some time. I've asked the legislature to do more to be able to have reform so that the incentives are aligned, so that rates could be stable. I mean, look, insurance, people understand, like, if it goes up a little bit, you kind of, but when you have these big increases, I mean, it really hits people. And so we want to be there for consumers. There's a lot of tomfoolery still in the market in Florida with how people are gaming it. We've tried to cut back on some of these junk lawsuits, but you still have some out there. So we've got to do that to put the consumer first. I do think you're going to see some benefit with new companies coming in because we have done some good reforms, but it just takes some time. You got a lot of companies who were here during Irma, and they've been saddled with a lot of litigation. You know, we had, and Jimmy would know the stats better than me, but we had in the most recent year where they have statistics, 18% of all property insurance claims were filed in Florida, but it was like 80% of all the litigation related to that was in Florida. That is what's driving up rates, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. So we've done a lot. You know, obviously there have been problems in this market for a long time. We want to do more, and again, the goal is let's have a stable insurance rates, and let's make sure we're working out for the consumers. Anybody else? Yes.
Where are we on constitutional carry?
Put it on my desk. I'll sign it. Happy to do that. Yes, sir.
Yes, Governor. Florida has a medical marijuana law, but it's a little bit more narrow than maybe a few other states. In the context of this bill, is it trying to maybe look at that?
How so? What would you do?
It defines all the diseases and maybe not giving the doctors and patients a chance to discuss other applications of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these guys may know, but I'm pretty sure that was a constitutional amendment that had specific parameters. And so if you wanted to legislate beyond that, you'd have to actually change the Constitution. I think as it's implemented now, it does exhaust what was mandated by there. Actually, maybe you wouldn't have to do it. I don't know. I'd have to look at that language. So, but at the end of the day, when I became governor, it really hadn't been implemented. We said that the people had passed it, and let's implement it. And so we've implemented it and been able to move it forward, I think, better than most people thought we'd be able to do. Yes? Across the country? You know off the top of your head?
Zero in Florida last year because our Florida Board of Medicine is beholden to you guys.
Yeah, so we appoint the board. So we have an ability to to make sure that we have good licensing board here. The problem is that you know, that those members change, new people come in, and there's not really protections. You're just hoping that they're not doing this. Other states, they've put people in place who really want to be aggressive at taking people's credentials and taking people's licenses. And so in Florida, we've set a kind of a standard of we want people to be able to practice. At the same time, you know, you see a lot of trouble on the horizon for what's going on. And, you know, the thing is you have different states. There's people that are licensed in different states. There's different rules in different states. It's not like it's the same thing. So states have always traditionally been able to do this, and so we want to make sure that we have a wider berth for people when we're going forward. So let's see if we're able to get it through. Maybe we'll come here and sign the bill. We'll see what we can do. So thank you, guys. Thanks.
Governor Ron DeSantis speaking on the Florida Panhandle this Thursday morning as he makes his exit. Reporters in attendance not asking about the viral moment from Wednesday in which he chided students at USF for wearing masks behind him at a press conference at the University of South Florida. JB here with you folks on Battleground Florida on WFLA Now. Wherever you're watching from, glad to have you with us this as we almost transition now into Thursday afternoon, coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to go over our poll results. Evan Donovan might join us for another moment or two before we wrap up this stream, but Governor DeSantis not asked about this particular moment at USF yesterday. He will be appearing, of course, in press conferences in the future, and he might be asked about it at some point, but not being asked about it today by the reporters in attendance at the university, or excuse me, at Panama City Beach in reference to what happened at the University of South Florida. Let's go back to our poll results here. Let's go to Twitter first. Twitter, and let's you could see it on my screen. We'll refresh this. The current poll results are 1,027 votes. Again, the question being in the video from USF, do you think Governor DeSantis was rude or bullied the students wearing masks? 60% say yes, 40% or so say no. And then we'll come back, we'll go back to our Facebook Live poll results, 2,400 votes there. Did Governor DeSantis act rude or bully the mask-wearing students? In the Wednesday video from USF, 56% say yes, 44% say no. So, folks, I believe this is going to wrap up our streaming coverage here on Battleground Florida. Again, grateful to have you with us. More on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. For Evan Donovan, I'm JB Buno. We'll see you next time here live on WFLA Now.